For the last 10 years, there have been many releases in the pixel-perfect platforming genre of games. At best, these games offer intelligently designed levels that don't make you want to smash your head through the wall. These games often attempt to pad themselves out with collectibles and secrets that can give the player, or maybe just me, a terrible feeling of anxiety that you will consistently miss something. What's amazing about Celeste, the new game from Matt Thorson and his collaborators, is that it manages to pack in so much emotion and story, but still maintain the challenging and occasionally masochistic level design over the course of 600 screens. This is the game you need to have on your Nintendo Switch, or the other consoles it's being released on. If you aren't familiar with the name Matt Thorson, you are likely more familiar with his first big indie project, TowerFall. TowerFall was the now defunct indie console Ouya's first and maybe only killer app. It led the charge for incredibly polished, local-only multiplayer games that we saw a lot of in 2013 and since. Post Ouya, the game was re-released as TowerFall Ascension on consoles with many added new features. Even though I didn't have enough friends to get together to play TowerFall often, it was impossible to deny the game's polish. Its visuals and music made the game world feel fully realized. Everything felt so lived in, and the characters had a lot of personality while it was all technically unnecessary. The idea that Matt Thorson and many of the people who worked on TowerFall were going to move forward and create a new, single-player focused game was incredibly exciting for me. Matt, who seems to do the majority of level design in his games, has a clear talent for it. The promise of over 600 designed stages in a pixel-perfect platformer for the Switch seemed like exactly what I wanted. I'm happy to say that I was right to expect this game to be incredible. Honestly though, my expectations did not go far beyond the game being well designed, having great visuals, and incredible music. While it obviously delivered on those fronts, I ended up playing a game offering much more. From the start, you realize this isn't your typical tough platforming game. It also featured a huge injection of character. Just the first conversation you have with the old woman, combined with the lively avatar screens and chirpy voices, you instantly start to understand your character, Madeline, and want to see her succeed despite this old woman's sassy attitude. Upon going through the first chapter, you are introduced to the game's basic mechanics. You can double jump, dash, wall jump, cling to a wall, and climb. While at first these mechanics can be used pretty loosely, the game slowly expects you to master these concepts. Each chapter has a different main gameplay gimmick, but you are always expected to have a firm understanding on how to play. The clever way the game teaches you these controls is to have you try to collect strawberries found throughout the game. They are almost always out of the way, and require you to approach an obstacle differently. They take it even a step further with the winged strawberries. These are areas where, if you use your double jump or dash ability, the strawberry will fly away. Of course, if you leave the level and come back, it will reappear. The brilliance of this particular collectible is that it requires you to take a step back and look at the mobility options you have beyond the dash or double jump. Sadly, beyond better teaching you the game, the strawberries offer no real benefit to the end game. Luckily, the game is upfront with you about this fact in one of the game's many hint postcards you see in between levels. Strawberries are just meant for bragging rights, according to the game. Though I will say, while the collectible may not have any specific effect on the outcome of the game, hunting these strawberries has you discovering many different areas in each chapter. Some of the game's most enjoyable challenges come from finding these fruits, so while I don't recommend ignoring them outright, it is nice that you aren't punished for being unable to find them all. Now for collectibles that do affect the game. Throughout each chapter, you will come across cassette tapes that unlock the B-side version of that chapter. These B-side levels are a nightmare version of the standard level progression. For people looking for or expecting an insane challenge in their platformer, these levels are for you. Since they are based on the specific chapter, they aren't always about pixel-perfect platforming, but more so, building on the gimmick of the chapter and pushing it much further. What's really impressive about Celeste and its level design is that no matter how difficult it gets, I always felt that I could see the solution to the stage just by looking at it. Oftentimes with games like this, I feel I need to die hundreds of times till I finally discover the solution, and then die 100 more times just trying to execute it. Sure, I still died many times in Celeste, but it was always my fault, and the fact that I knew what I needed to do to correct those mistakes as soon as they were made kept me motivated to keep trying. The other smart part of these B-side levels is that you don't have to worry about collecting strawberries or discovering secrets. They let you focus on just finishing the difficult task at hand. When you finish the chapter, you never have to do it again, unless you hate yourself. The only real issue I had with the B-side stages is that, since they are so difficult, they often made the normal versions of the level seem way too easy. Originally while playing, I'd collect the B-side tape and immediately do the B-side version of the level. This really made whatever the next normal stages were seem too much like a cakewalk. After doing this a few times, I decided to just save the B-sides for after I finished the game, which allowed me to enjoy both halves of the game much more. I found that there really were 4 different ways to play Celeste, each interesting in their own way. You could simply play the game for its story, which I will talk more about in a moment. You could play it as a completionist, attempting to find every strawberry and secret, and to beat every B-side. You could even approach the game as a speedrunner, using an optional speedrun mode clock to track your time. Finally, if you struggle to approach the game from any of these directions, you can use the assist mode, which allows you to change the game in a few ways to make it more accessible. While all 4 of these options will give you an overall enjoyable experience, I do think speedrunners may be a bit disappointed that there is no way to compare your chapter completion time beyond bragging on Twitter. Obviously, speedrunning communities have managed to build themselves around games that existed before the internet connected them, but it is something that would have kept me interested in shaving seconds off my completion time. What really kept me going in Celeste beyond the fantastic level design was the story of the game. It's maybe not the richest of narratives, but it makes up for it by having very real and thoughtfully used characters. Few games have made me feel quite as much as this game did, and I often find myself relating to Madeline's feelings of self-doubt and anxiety. These feelings are written with so much maturity and seemingly from a place of experience, though I don't want to make assumptions about the people who wrote this game. Turns out the hardships of anxiety match quite well with the metaphor of attempting to climb a mountain. Great dialogue paired with highly expressive talking sounds, and character portraits do nothing but add to who these people are and how the mountain has affected their lives. This game made me laugh and it made me cry, but most importantly, it made me excited to get to the next chapter so I could experience everything it had to offer. The game is set to an incredible score composed by Lena Raine, who I honestly had never heard of prior to this game. It's smartly crafted, knowing when to be somber or exciting. I have maybe 10 games whose soundtracks I will listen to casually outside of the game they are in, and this is definitely going to join that club. In addition to the tracks by Lena, each B-side stage has a remix track done by guest composers that add a lot of variety to challenging stages you will be spending a lot of time on. I spent about 13 hours with the game, but that was only for completing the story, collecting 125 out of 180 strawberries, and beating 3 of the 8 B-side stages. Overall, Celeste is a game that is way more than I expected it to be, or even than it needed to be. I was looking for a challenging platformer, with nice music and visuals that I could enjoy from time to time on my Switch. What I got instead is a masterfully designed game with a fully realized identity in every possible way. From its 3D modeled overworld that makes the mountain seem like an impossible beast, to the unbelievable library of sound effects used. When you play the game, just take the time to jump and walk on each type of surface to truly understand the range that went into it. The game used its challenging gameplay to match the challenge being 20-something and feeling like you have no control over your life and the anxiety that comes with that. It made me reflect on my own life and choices in a way that most mediums just don't. Sure, I have a minor gripe here and there, but they really are mostly based on preferences. Celeste is one of the best games I have ever played, and I know I will be revisiting it for years to come, even if it's just to pick a few strawberries.